there are several commercial benefits in relation to the cloud. I suppose the ones that have had most coverage in relation to the cost savings that can be delivered through cloud computing. Secondly, the scalability of it in terms of the ability for customers to upscale the amount of cloud services that they're consuming, and potentially downscale indeed as well, and that you can purchase it more like traditionally you might purchase a utility such as gas or water. So from that perspective, they're probably the two key benefits, but there are several others as well. Things like for SMEs that don't want to technology refresh continuously their IT, they can rely on a third party to actually have the IT infrastructure that's perhaps better than they could finance for themselves. And that's another key benefit.
You know, depending on the type of customer you're looking at, what we typically see is that a lot of customers are trying to figure out how can they use cloud computing to really reduce their operational costs of IT. And I think customers today expect that IT is going to work as a service. Just as John said, you know, flicking on a light switch, you know, we expect that electricity is going to work. So the type of scenarios that we're seeing is that, you know, IT users today are looking for, they're more mobile, they've got a lot more devices, and really how are those devices connecting to their IT infrastructure, and cloud computing offers a lot more flexibility when it comes to those scenarios. But I think one of the big, I suppose, advantages, certainly from an IT perspective, is that it allows IT to shift focus. So really away from spending a lot of time doing tasks that organizations might see as quite repetitive, you know, managing email. So organizations now are able to, you know, shift their focus towards more strategic assets within their organization and utilize those resources more effectively.
Traditionally, organizations, you know, spend about 70% of their annual budget just on OPEX, so keeping the lights on. But the way IT is moving is sort of converged infrastructure. So no longer are organizations looking at specific siloed IT purchases as in a server or storage or virtualization. They're now looking for a converged infrastructure. So having this one appliance that manages all of their IT infrastructure, like a private cloud, for instance. And that then enables organizations to drive far greater efficiencies throughout their organizations, much better agility, so they can address new markets, new opportunities. But coupled with that, I think you know, there's a general trend in Generation Y, the youth of today. You know, when people come to work today, they probably have better technology at home than they have in the office. So a lot of organizations are challenged with how can I motivate my staff to be more, I suppose, in tune with what's going on in the wider economy, but also able to adapt to how we drive and change our business. So having solutions that are cloud-based enable organizations to completely mobilize all of their applications in an open source way to enable anybody, both internal and external to the organization, access data and applications on any device at any time or anywhere in a much more cost-efficient way.
My take on it is that what we're seeing is a development of a perfect storm. So you have a number of economic challenges that are driving businesses to behave differently and seek to find ways to drive their business differently, coupled with technology advances which have happened at just the right time to capitalise on that economic challenge. And the result is people are not seeing cloud as previously they've seen technology partners as a piece of tech. They're seeing cloud as a way of transforming their business model. So cloud goes beyond the idea that cloud is purely a cloud service, some software as a service, a platform as a service. People are now saying, well, cloud is a way I can run my business. Cloud is a model for running the IT services and those business function services that drive what my core business does. And it's seen as a way of pushing out to largely aggregated providers of software services, hardware services, infrastructure services, those things that businesses no longer see as core to their day-to-day operations in a way that they've never been able to do before, post-storm.
There's absolutely a lot of misinformation around whether it's public, private, hybrid cloud, and quite rightly, a lot of public sector organisations, for even in Ireland, for public sector organisations to look at moving towards a public cloud. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Obviously, the Patriot Act and Safe Harbour, try and allow for safe data management. But again, nobody can be absolutely clear that if you move to a public cloud like some of the Googles or Amazons, that your data will not be investigated or used or tracked by, for instance, the US government. So what a private cloud obviously enables organizations to do, or a hybrid cloud, is manage all of the very secure and sensitive data internally within their own infrastructure.
Most of the security challenges that we would come across in our end customers would typically start from a scenario where something has been breached either through their laptop or mobile device. So a lot of the time, when customers talk about the security challenge that they have with the cloud, it stems from a relatively poor process that has been implemented in the organization around the device management, for instance. So one of the things that we're very focused on, and this mix of public and hybrid cloud is a well-banded phrase. And I think it's an area that every organization needs to look at as to what is the right solution for them. Today we're seeing that the vast majority of organizations that are looking at cloud are doing a mix. So they're looking at both a hybrid solution that entails public cloud offering of some description and their own private offering as well.
The challenge that I'll talk about that I see is not one of security or compliance, but it's actually one of procurement, and the challenge of how do I buy cloud services. So the problem is that we have standards around how IT is delivered. People understand how they can compare apples with apples when they're buying services from technology vendors. When you're looking at consuming things as a service, that becomes much harder to do those accurate comparisons. And at the point that it becomes difficult to do comparisons, suddenly the idea of working out the different return on investments, what's the most cost-effective way of delivering this, what's the most technically elegant way of consuming the service, what's the most commercially elegant way of paying for the service, becomes very difficult to do. And I think one of the things that I've seen working for BT, and we work in a fairly agnostic environment, is how do we help our customers who have the challenges of so much at their disposal. Everything at their disposal is slightly different. There are no standards around cloud security. There are no real standards around how infrastructure as a service should be consumed. What's the atomic unit of an infrastructure as a service solution? Do I pay per virtual machine? Should I pay for how many CPU cycles I use? It's just not defined. I can see my colleagues around the table nodding and smiling. And helping customers understand how to navigate their way through that minefield before they even get to the minefields of security is a real challenge for people at the moment.
We have several clients who are very interested in cloud. Some have already procured it, and some of the difficulties they're having is exactly that, is how to actually, the governance of it and the procurement side, is how to benchmark that against perhaps the way they've procured IT to date, and the risks, trying to actually measure those risks. And I think it's probably fair to say in traditional outsourcing you have organisations like Gartner and IDC who produce helpful statistics, and consultants who can get involved in that and benchmark that for customers. But certainly there's a deficit there. There is a cloud industry forum in the UK, and the UK government have also published some very interesting plans or strategies around what their plans are for public and hybrid cloud, and why they're doing one thing rather than another, which I think is very interesting, because obviously MI5 data is not going to be in a public cloud, it's going to be in a very secure private cloud. So it's that type of articulation that I think is starting to flow internationally, that is starting to benchmark and show perhaps SMEs and larger corporates how they might procure it.
And one of the challenges that I found with helping corporates make that decision is they have to change their mindset. They need to change the way they think about the way they consume these services.
Any organisation that's looking at the cloud is that they do that analysis before taking that jump, and that they've looked closely at what is the return on investment for their business.
The cloud offers every type of business the opportunity to avail of the latest innovation in terms of new business applications. For instance, Salesforce.com, even Microsoft's own applications, they're much more widely available now to every type of organisation, and the cost models around that, the speed to market to deployment is far quicker. Before, if you were implementing an ERP system, you're talking 6 months to 2 years, depending on the level of requirements that your business had. Today, an organisation through cloud can deliver any type of service back to the business in days. the new generation expect applications to be delivered, in real time. And what we're finding is a lot of companies we're dealing with see this as a massive opportunity to take their current legacy infrastructure and repurpose that in a virtual world. So there's a new element of developers developing and deploying applications in an open sourced virtual way.
The opportunity in Ireland around cloud computing. So, whether it's organisations like Microsoft, EMC, Amazon, we've all invested heavily in our data centre infrastructure in Ireland, and there's some very compelling reasons why organisations have done that. I think the opportunity though for Ireland Inc. is that we are a number of years ahead of some other European nations in this respect, and as organisations throughout Ireland figure out the benefits of moving to cloud computing, it really does set us up as with a great opportunity to really embrace that. And I think the challenge that we're going to have though is in terms of just the skills shortage in Ireland. And we've done some analysis recently where we're predicting that there's somewhere in the region of about 1,000 individuals in terms of skill sets that we're looking for in the Irish economy that just aren't there. So I think if we're going to embrace cloud computing, the next generation of school leavers, the next generation of college technicians, this is a really important area that they could focus on, and allowing Ireland to really sort of regain its competitiveness in this area.
In July, EMC launched the world's first cloud computing, Masters in Cloud Computing, in conjunction with CIT in Cork. A very valid point. I think Microsoft and EMC between us probably employ nearly 5,000 people. So I think if you're looking at Ireland Inc. and Ireland, we have, like Microsoft, EMC have been in Ireland for over 20 years. We've invested a huge amount in the Irish economy. I'd say between both organisations we probably contribute to $1.5 billion in terms of net income to Ireland from an indigenous revenue stream. I think it's incumbent upon Irish organisations as well to look at the players, if we're talking about an Irish perspective, to look at the vendors that have invested heavily in Ireland and have stayed in Ireland, stayed with Ireland right through this economic turmoil. And when they're looking to invest in technology, that they're investing in companies that invested in Ireland and have solutions backed in Ireland for Ireland.
In terms of skills base and in terms of experience as well, MOP, we set up our technology group about 20 years ago. Looking down the line at the time, it was very much around some individual clients that we were beginning to act for, multinationals as it happens, who were actually just establishing in Ireland. And since then, now we have probably the largest technology and intellectual property group in the country. Very much dedicated to understanding these issues and actually articulating our positions and actually getting these deals done, to be honest. But I would say in terms of sophistication that the market has moved on quite a bit in Ireland, and in terms of sophistication probably in the last 3 or 4 years. So from that perspective, I think the recession hasn't been a bad thing in that respect, in that narrow respect. Because people have had to look again at risk and I think and reward and measure those perhaps more equally than was previously the case.
I think the only closing comment from me, again, I would point to skills, and one of the great things that BT brings to bear in a local market is global expertise. I'm sure I haven't gone amiss that I'm sitting here and I don't have an Irish accent, but I spend a great deal of my time working here in Ireland, as I do across Europe. And I think that the companies that have invested in Ireland, the multinational companies that invested in Ireland, can bring that expertise from outside of Ireland as well in to help local businesses. I mean, the strapline I use is global expertise, local people. And it's about getting that expertise in to help people leverage the amazing opportunities that cloud and that perfect storm of circumstance have brought for people to try and leverage.